Gary Simon of DesignCourse.com. Today I'm going to do the review of the 8th DesignCourse.com Design Challenge, and that was based on doing a fictional logo design for a company called SpeedCloud. Alright, so yeah, we had a lot of entries, so thank you for all of your entries. So let me go ahead and get started. Alright, so before I get on with the review, real quickly, I just wanted to show some of you guys just a project from Mentor. So, you know, just recently I launched DesignCourse Premium right here, and that is just a set of different products. One of them, the main one being one-on-one design training. And part of that of Premium also is DesignCourse Viz ID, which is a visual identity design course, which will show you how to design full identities like branding and logo design for companies. And then Mentor, you select from a bunch of different fictional projects, and then you take what you learn there and then applied, you know, you try to see how you can do on your own, which is kind of important. And so one of our members submitted this project from Mentor, and this is just a fictional project called Sync and Learn. And basically, this is what I submitted. It's called a corporate identity. It's something you learn how to do in Viz ID. And then I provide a response based on that. And so, you know, these design challenges where I do a quick review of, you know, what you submitted, DesignCourse Mentor is like that, but like 100 times more basically. So I take some time and I review it through video, and then the individual is able to watch this video. I'm gonna pause it though. I don't want me talking over myself here. And I even, in a lot of cases, I will take the design, you can see it's an 8-minute video here, and offer suggestions and improvements based on what they did. So what's cool is this particular individual, they entered a second Mentor project, and they definitely made improvements from just, you know, this video and the critique I gave them. So definitely check out designcourse.com/premium. It's right now, if you use the promo code, it's $39 a month, $39.95. Very cheap. You can cancel anytime and only stay 1 month, and you would still gain a ton. All right, so enough of my spam. I'm going to go ahead and do the review here. All right, so basically, for this, we had a ton of entries. Just use blues and or blacks, no other company text, show a version that's at least 500 by 500 pixels, and submit by them. All right, so this person, this isn't an entry, they had a question about something. So the first entry we have is from Gizmo Znager, and so the first thing that I would say here is, you know, in terms of the type, that this is fine. In terms of the symbol though, it feels a little bit disconnected because we have first here, over here is the cloud, and then separate are the tails that's coming from it. It seems like you could probably make a big improvement just by integrating these tails into the cloud, maybe as white space, because right now it feels more like an illustration than it does a single, you know, compact identifiable mark. All right, so that's one big thing I would say that would improve this. All right. Secondly, we have here from Janine. So basically, there's a lot here that probably could be definitely improved. I understand by having the trails and the slashes here, you're trying to convey the idea of speed, but what happens is when you put it over the actual text, it makes it kind of difficult to read. Plus, on top of that, the colors seem a little bit washed out with the gradient that you've applied. So if you were to scale this down, you would have a hard time at a small size kind of seeing exactly what's going on. So I also see that there's like a stroke, a dash stroke going on here. With a gradient also applied onto it. Just a little bit too much happening in terms of complexity and color for it to be identifiable. Like, I'm not even, if I didn't know already, it would be hard to know that this is necessarily a cloud right off the bat. So I would work on, you know, I'm going to show you there's a few concepts here that really do a good job of what I'm talking about. So just keep watching the video if you are you, and yeah, and you'll see what I mean. So the next one's from Mira. So here's the result. So they mentioned, you know, no common cloud logo, which is fine. Simple and white space, trust in class, and one font for the name, maybe different font weights. Okay. So initially when I saw this design here, I thought to myself, you know, is that SS? You know, is that like, it's supposed to be SC, I thought, but really what you meant maybe was just like a single S being outlined on the left and right of the letter. Either way, I would say, you know, in and of itself, it feels a little bit cloudish, I guess you could say, and there is an S there. So it is definitely more so on the abstract side, you know, which is fine. But I would definitely say in terms of your alignment with the mark and the type here, that could have some improvement. So I would probably scale down the size of the symbol in relation to the text a little bit and align it so that maybe it's in the center. Because right now you don't even have it on a baseline, which is right down here. It just feels it feels as though it's just a little bit off, and it feels like two separate things going on instead of just one single logo. In terms of the font, I'm usually not too much of a fan of the serif fonts for especially something that's web-based. It feels a little bit dated in my opinion, so that's why I understand you're trying to go for trust, but I don't know. I mean, this seems elegant enough, the lines in the path, that I don't think you would have too much of a problem with any type of the ideas of trying to convey trust. So I wouldn't necessarily take the route of using a serif font like this for that reason alone. All right. So Buck Bomby, we have down here Speed Cloud, very simple logo. I would say maybe the only gripe I would have, well, I have a couple gripes, they're not big though, is that on the side of originality and uniqueness, you may have, I mean, I understand that there's white space here and you have another cloud, and maybe that's supposed to emulate speed, but overall I like it. Compared to a lot of entries, I actually do like it. It's very simple. You could scale it down, you'll be able to see it still at a small size. You kept it at one color, you know. The other gripe that I have is maybe there's a little bit too much space between speed and cloud. When you already have the difference of the font weight, you can move those closer together. All right. And then second, another entry from this individual. I would say if you're going to take this route, well, you really introduce an element of complexity already into it, so you can get rid of this. You don't really need that because you already have the element of speed conveyed already through this. All right. And then secondly, I'm not entirely too sure about the radial sort of gradient that you have in here. Only because it seems like it clashes a lot. I would find a way to make it a little bit more simplistic while keeping this, the clock idea. But overall, the cloud and stuff, I like that. So, all right, another one from Panda. So this one, I like the idea of introducing, you know, like an arrow shooting upwards. You know, that's the idea of conveying speed. But there's a couple things that have been done wrong here. Mainly, there's an issue of contrast. There's not much of it happening. So you would really want, so we already have the form of the cloud here. And by the way, I would also get rid of the stroke. It's pretty much unnecessary in this usage. So I would get rid of the very brief stroke that you have. And I would also get rid of the flares like this, these intricate flare designs with the balls. I would get rid of that completely. I would probably scale up this arrow, and I would make it so that you can actually see it a lot better. Right now it's just a lot of blues and it's a little bit lighter. I would try to work on making it white and maybe getting rid of some of the other extra fine detail that you have in here. And again, if you keep on watching this video and watch till I get to the second page, you'll see there's a couple of examples that I really like and really showcase about, you know, how you can approach this in a little bit better area. And also the radial gradients, I would get rid of that as well off of each of the letters. It's just not necessary, and it kind of just makes it difficult to read in a sense. All right, so Lars. Okay, so this one, there's two entries here. So basically, I like the idea of having tails, you know, kind of to give the idea of speed with the cloud. But at the first entry that I reviewed, this is the same kind of issue. They feel a little bit separate. If you're going to have this, I would try to make so that these four lines align with the side of this cloud, because right now they just feel completely separate. And then also there's an issue with the size of the font and the size of the cloud. This is definitely too small in relation to it, because especially if you were to put this on a website, it'd have to be scaled down a lot more, and then you wouldn't be able to see the speed cloud anymore. So I would work on that. Overall, I do kind of like that. Oh, and also another one is like the stroke ends here. They're flat. You could change those caps to rounded, because these are rounded as well. That way you keep things consistent in their appearance. And you kind of just change the tail on this, it looks like. I actually like this one a little bit better. All right, and we have, I don't even know how to, PJ, I'm just gonna call you PJ. All right, and so we have here, it's difficult at first to really read that the fact that this is an S and a C. Generally, when it comes to logo design, if you're going to have letters in it or you're going to use a letter mark, you kind of want it to come out and be recognizable within the first second or so, because upon viewing it. And this, you know, just because I know there's a logo competition, I'm going to sit here and really try to figure it out. And it did take me a little bit of time just to see the S and the C here. And so with that said, you want to try to make that a little bit more evident. And then secondly, when it comes to the outer shadow or the outer glow, this dark outer glow that you apply to it, completely unnecessary. I wouldn't do that at all. Just you work with the colors. Like if you're going to have a darker blue for this, go ahead and do that. And then the negative space would be white, and you could see it. You don't need to add the glow, the outer glow. And in terms of professional logo design, it's just a turnoff in terms of the appearance. So aside from that, you kept the cloud simple, which is definitely a plus, and the type as well. So, and then secondly, I would not do that. Yeah, never try to mix or put in the background of the symbol, and try not to mix the type and the symbol like this, because otherwise you're gonna make it difficult to read when it gets at a smaller font size. So try to keep them separate if possible. And then over here, Phoboleb or Feboleb. So yeah, we have an issue with colors, I would say. You have a gradient that's on here, and it kind of goes from this green, and it really clashes, I would say, with this blue. So I would try to definitely work on if you're gonna have gradients, I would definitely work on trying to keep it, you know, a minimum to the colors that you're working with, whatever color you're working with, which right here in this case is being blue. So adding the green to it just kind of clashes, in my opinion. And then second, another tip here, when you're presenting a logo, it's always nice to, you know, I know I said 500 by 500, but that doesn't mean scale the logo up to 500 by 500. Try to add a lot of white space. So scale the logo down so that we can see it without seeing the edge of the site and the text by it and everything. Otherwise, it'll make it hard to see, really. So what I'm talking about, if I go into Photoshop real quick, and wow, that's huge, okay. And then I scale this down, we can see that it's just so much easier once I make this background white, just to see the logo rather than what the logo looks like when it's like this. So just a tip there, always white space, and makes things much more easy to see. And then second, the type here, I would close the gap between speed and cloud for sure, because again, you use a thicker font weight right here, and so the differentiation is already seen between the B and C. All right, so next one is Tates or Tats design. So I like the idea of just using a simple stroke for it. That's a good idea. But it seems like the cloud might need a little bit of work in terms of this portion right here. It seems like these two were good in terms, they're consistent in how the stroke is applied right here when it comes to this intersection, and this one over here, but this one feels a little bit different. It just feels like, I don't know, something's off a little bit. So I work a little bit more on the cloud form. And then I would say, you know, contrast, all that is good, but I would move the speed cloud up a little bit closer and probably scale down the size of this cloud here, or vice versa, so that they don't feel so separate in a way. So, and then third, I would say it probably lacks a little bit in terms of uniqueness, originality, just because there's no element of speed introduced here. It's just a cloud. So you'll see a few concepts that really do what I'm talking about well later on here. And then this one, I would say this one's definitely an improvement over this one, just because you can see it. There's a lot of contrast. But when you have this grayed out sort of type inside of what's already somewhat of a dark sort of blue, it makes it hard to see. So if I were you, I would have just made this white, maybe a slightly darker blue, and you'd be able to see the type in here. Alright, and then pixel chaos we have here. Alright, so my gripe mainly with this is there's a lot happening that's probably unnecessary. It feels almost like somewhat of an elaborate illustration. There's not much white space between these tails here in speed on this logo design concept at least. So I like this more, this concept here, because you can actually read the speed cloud. This one, the speed's set inside, and it seems like real cluttered. So this is definitely the better one. But if I'm looking at this one specifically, I would get rid of I would either get rid of this arrow or these tails, because again, someone else did that earlier. They're trying to really get elaborate and intricate in terms of trying to reinforce the idea of speed. So we already have the cloud. This can serve as, you know, the idea of conveying speed, these tails, or this. But I would probably get rid of the arrow as it's designed here, just because it seems like it's a little bit quirky in terms of or I don't even know what I'm saying. In terms of the design, it feels like it just doesn't flow right. I don't know. There's probably another way to get a better arrow in here. But yeah. And then in terms of the highlights here, or shadows, or whatever, there's, you know, I know what they're supposed to be, but I will probably get rid of those. I mean, if you want to have a colored version where you have those, that's fine, but for the black and white, I would say stay away from it. Alright, and Chris. So I like this one. This is the most unique cloud we've had so far for entry number 17. But there's one thing I would definitely say that you could get rid of, and it would make a huge improvement right off the bat. I would get rid of this little clock speed dial reference. Well, for one, it clashes right here with the blue, which it kind of breaks the design. And it breaks the flow. As you can see, there's literally a flow of these things. It feels like they're all interconnected. And I think that in and of itself kind of takes care of the idea of speed. So, you know, it is a cloud, but it feels like because everything's connected and the gradients are flowing, that already takes care of it. So in this case, I would say this is a very effective logo if you got rid of the minute or hour hand or whatever right here. It would appear much better. So yeah. With that said, with the font, the type selection, it didn't seem like too much went into the in choosing the font. Maybe it seems like something a little bit more unique could be done with this. But either way, the focus up here, I mean, if you got rid of that, would be a big improvement. So this is a good entry, I would say. Just, you know, disregarding the couple gripes I had. So Peter here. So I would say right away, get rid of these tiny little trails. I understand you're trying to emulate the idea of speed, but italicized text usually gets that idea across, just being pushed forward in a running motion. So when it comes to these fine details, you're gonna have a hard time kind of, even if they're scaled down a lot, it just won't look very good, especially when you have a symbol already over here. So I would get rid of those. The cloud, you know, I would say probably try to make everything on one line. It's a unique creative idea, but I would just keep everything simple on the same line. And then the cloud here, just so that it could be used possibly independently, I would try to scale it down, maybe thicken up the line to the stroke, and it would be a little bit more effective. Because right now with everything going on here, it's just a little bit cluttered. Otherwise, it is simple, and I definitely like it, and the colors are good. Alright, so Peter over here. Oh, that's the same person. So yeah, this is maybe a little bit more what I was talking about up here. Just having a separate symbol and using this, maybe thicken up these lines, because if you have anything that's a little bit too thin, when you scale that down, it becomes blurred usually and hard to read. So with this already, if you could just imagine taking this, maybe moving it down a little bit more, maybe scaling it down, making these all on the same line and get rid of these, it would be a much more effective logo. So
Yeah, you already did that down here. I forgot. I already went through these, but I forgot. There's so many, it's hard for me to remember. So yeah, you got rid of them. That's a good thing. You listen to me. You know, so anyhow, yeah, just move this down. There's too much space here. And then I would probably just align these two. And then PSYOPs over here. So one issue is if you have an EE or a letter mark or letters in the symbol, they should usually represent something, not just be kind of arbitrary letters inside of something, because people will think, you know, well, what is EE? So it may not make too much sense. So I would probably try to make this separate, or one thing I definitely want to do is have both of these shown at the same time. I'm not sure if that was your intention. It probably wasn't. If this is the whole logo, okay, it's definitely better than having this as well in addition to this. So I'm not too sure I would emphasize though and have this behind the EE in and of itself, just because it seems like, you know, well, what is EE? You know, what significance does that have? So in terms of contrast, simplicity, I really like it, even with the cloud being uppercased up like this. I definitely like it. So all right, so Tiki Max. All right, so there's a lot of improvement that could be made here. I mean, not to be an ass or anything, but you know, when it comes to logo design, you have these very thin lines that are just separating this graphical sort of element. There's just too much happening for it to be a real effective logo. So there's also issues with the contrast, the gradients that's applied to these clouds on this portion right here kind of clashes with the blue. You have two clouds here. It's just cluttering it a lot, way too much. I understand the idea of kind of making it mirrored, but there's just too much happening for it to be a real effective logo. So you would want to only use one cloud, and also I wouldn't flip the cloud like this, or not flip it or move it, you know, 90 degrees or whatever. I would keep it represented as your standard cloud, just because it kind of throws you off a little bit. So just keep on watching this video and you'll see a couple real good concepts where the person really did it right, in my opinion. All right, so okay, so this is the same person, and I think it definitely made a huge improvement from this to this. I'm definitely a fan of not using all these gradients and all this, you know, these different color gradients and stuff. So this is definitely a huge improvement. This time they used the D as trying to be the cloud. I would say, if you got maybe just made one of the, just make this a D, a regular D, like this text over here, and then maybe fill this in with that blue. Maybe put a D in there. It could work a little bit, but still, I'm not a fan of flipping the cloud like that. But yeah, huge improvement from there to there. All right, so Alexander. This one, I'm not a fan of the glows and the what do you call it? Looks like motion blurs happening in here. You got to try not to do that as much as possible. The font, I would say, is definitely kind of too thick, and they're just barely touching each other, which creates for clutter, really. And let's see what else. So, and also trying to convey all these ideas within a logo, that's not how you do it. I mean, just imagine if like McDonald's or something, if they tried to convey that they sell drinks and you know, beverages and what do you call it, different sandwiches. You don't want to do that with your logo. You want it to be a very simple, single, identifiable logo mark. That's why I wish some of you people would join DesignCourse Premium, even if it's just for a month, so I can work with you specifically, because I can take you guys, you have talent, I can tell, raw talent, but I can take you guys and really just make you better designers just within 30 days. But anyhow, yeah, thanks for the entry. Another one for Tiki here, and this is just a mark here. I'm not a fan of this gradient that's running the white. It's kind of clashing with this, and then there's the inner shadow. Try to stay away from this. I'm trying to really emphasize it this time with this design challenge. Try to stay away from all these crazy gradients and inset effects. I mean, plus we still have the flipped cloud thing going. You can still have a cloud and try to make it, you know, these tails just coming off the side or something, so you can just flip this way. All right, and I'm gonna, All right, page 2. All right, so here's another one from Newman, or no, this is their first post, I think. Do you need any improvements? Well, you entered a couple here, so I would say out of the 3 that you submitted, I would get rid of this just because it looks a little bit too intricate, too technical, I would say. This one, I like the font better than this one up here, although there's not like a huge difference. But I actually like it. Yeah, I actually do like it. I mean, it's very simple. You have a cloud, and it's kind of serving as the back of a clock, and this is the center. So yeah, this isn't bad at all. So I don't really have too many gripes with this. I would say it feels just a tad bit possibly bland, but really, I mean, in terms of if I'm comparing it to most of the other entries, this is still pretty good here. All right, and then we still have the basic form, just with a different color gradient. So thanks for the enthusiasm and trying to submit them, though. So all right, so all right, Kim, we have here. Okay, so we have. They don't like the S already, but okay. So this, I really like this cloud, just because it is so simple. And so when it comes to logo design, something that's really simple, that's awesome. But introducing the S and the C to the left of it already, now you've made it a little bit too complex. So I would find a way, if you wanted to make it a letter mark, try to get it inside of here somehow, or maybe make it flow, or somehow maybe make, if you're going to have an S, maybe try to make this part the C from the cloud. But I would ultimately maybe just get rid of the idea of making it a letter mark, and just working with this idea and making it, trying to introduce the element of speed somehow into this cloud. I like the cloud a lot. And the font selection, of course, I think we need to scale that down. And remember, I already mentioned to you this before. This individual's on Mentor, but just previously in this video, scaling it down so that we can see it without all this this minimal white space on the side. All right, and cone. All right, so again, the same issue with it being real big. Scale that sucker down so we can see it. This kind of, it almost works because it's on the very edge here, but the problem is when you scale this down, it's going to feel like it's chopped off completely. So just to show you real quickly, so if I scale this down, I'm going to fill this with black real quick, or at least right here. I don't know, it just kind of feels immediately just chopped off. Let me go back to the screen here. And so the size of the cloud in relation to speed cloud, I'm not sure if I'm too much of a fan of. Actually, it's not too bad. I mean, if this is white, we could definitely see it more. Let me go back here. And so one thing you have to be wary of is when you're using certain fonts, the distance between the letters, they could sometimes be off. So you need to manually adjust for that when you're using these fonts, because there's a lot of space between the S and the P and the E, and then not between the rest of the letters, the tracking. So you want to make sure you get that set so that it doesn't, because it'll just not look good as a whole, even to people who aren't artistic. All right. And then Minifig Steve, I would say, again, the other gripe that I had with, trying to convey all these different ideas through the logo, get rid of these entirely. And then definitely, I know this is your first post. You'll know that if you watch enough of these challenge videos, I'm not a fan of having all the drop shadows and the outer glows and the gradients all combined to each other. So coming up pretty shortly, there's going to be a concept that I'm going to say, hey, this is good. This is how you should do it. So just stick with me. All right, so Mike here, another, trail type of thing. The problem is when it comes to these gradients, when they're all not one color, you'll have clashes here if you're using gradients on different elements. So you see they kind of clash right here, and that doesn't look good generally. So I would try to make, if you're going to have a gradient, include it with these three tails, the gradient, so that it's a consistent gradient all the way across. All right, and then aside from that, in terms of just how they're kind of just going off into the distance, and I would try to work on integrating that better, in a sense. And then the size of the speed cloud in relation to this, again, if we scaled this thing down a lot more so that we have more white space and we could view it without the clutter of the website, I'd be able to kind of see better or ascertain better, you know, if this, the size of the mark is good with the size of the text. All right, and there's a little bit too much space for my liking between speed and cloud, although, again, it's hard to tell because it's so big and up against the browser. When it comes to the cloud, there's just not enough happening. I mean, the cloud shape itself is fine, but there's not enough happening for it to be unique, I guess you could say. And sometimes having like this, you know, small different treatments inside of the type is fine, although I think this is a tad bit too thick. But yeah, I would just work on trying to make the cloud more unique. And this is better. So, you know, I probably wouldn't have used white or black. I would use white instead, and maybe use a darker, or it may be fine with this shade already. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it or what that would look like in white. But yeah, this is definitely better. All right, so Tiki Max. This is actually something you could work with, but I would say try to get rid of all the details, maybe make a more simple sort of cloud, and maybe use a little bit less of these trails, and then scale it down a little bit in relation to the speed cloud here. And then in terms of the gradient, it looks like there's a gradient with 3 different colors, kind of just with the white in there. I'd probably get rid of that. In terms of color, it just makes a little bit too much going on for the purpose here. But yeah, it's definitely unique. So thinking out of the box and definitely graphical. So Alexander, there's a big issue with this one when it comes to the complexity issue. So I would say get rid of all the intersection lines, because especially when you take something like this, and, oh, it's gonna do that. 1 second. Let me go over here. When you take something like this and you scale it down to a size like that, it makes it hard to read because you have not much white space between the cloud, this line right here, and the text right here, and it just seems a little bit too intricate for it to be an effective logo. So, you know, if you take a look at some of the top logos, just go to Google and type in top brand logos or something like that. You'll see that they don't have all these intricate lines, and that's for a very important reason, because clutter and complexity is something that's usually hard for people to remember, to immediately remember and immediately identify. So that's just a real important note here. All right, so I like the idea of, you know, in terms of creativity, that's certainly there, but we could just definitely work in terms of making this more simple. All right, so Volkovich, or I think that's how you pronounce it. This is definitely, in terms of all the entries I've seen so far, the best one. In terms of, you know, a very simple cloud shape. In terms of the rocket in the middle, which kind of just seems to completely just flow right with the circular cloud shapes. And so we have the cloud and we have the reference to speed right here. Perfect. So I really like this as a design. So for all of you other individuals who are really just beating yourselves up over the complexity part of the logo and focusing on a lot of the gradients and all the crazy colors and stuff, this coming up with a solid, unique idea, that's what logo design's about. All right, so, and then we have Macarus here, speed cloud. So it seems like the actual mark here, when it comes to using a gray, I mean, you have 3 different colors here. You have a black and gray and blue and a gradient on the blue. It seems like a little bit too much is happening here. So I would probably get rid of the gray and just stick with the blue. If you're going to have a lightning bolt in there, which it's a cool idea, the concept of it, I think it would be integrated better by maybe having just a filled in logo like this, the cloud, and then using the white space to integrate this flash some way. So that's why, again, I wish some of you guys were DesignCourse Premium members. I would actually take this cloud and I would fill it in exactly, show you guys what I'm talking about. So now we have a letter mark. There's not enough white space between the S and the C and the cloud here. So it creates for a little bit of clutter. So I'd scale that down if I were to do, take this approach. And this symbol, along with the cloud bolt, that's too much in and of itself. So I would look to minimize that. And then these lines right here are just too thin. So the smaller size, they become pixelated. So I would stay away from that. And then I also try to stay away from, whenever you're working with type, try to stay away from letters that clash of different colors. It kind of just creates a clash and it doesn't look good. So yeah, version 2 here. Yeah, and this right here, someone else put like the logo intersecting or symbol with the type, and it creates clutter. So I would stay away from doing that. I would move the speed over to the left, and then you can have the cloud in the cloud. That's fine, but definitely don't let them intersect. And these aren't needed as well. So the speed also, having downwards, I don't know. I mean, traditionally, a down arrow means negativity, and so if you wanted to animate speed, I would put it on the upper part of the D. That would make more sense. But yeah. All right, so ALG portfolio. So 3 were entered here for this one, and I definitely like this one the most in terms of the symbol, and I think maybe even the text or the type. So this is it flows real well with the side of the cloud. Maybe you could try to find a way for it to kind of find some type of way for you to get it so that the arrow's up, because we have the down arrow thing. But either way, I like this the most. This, we have the down arrow again, plus it doesn't seem too 100%, I would say, original or whatever, but I like this a lot actually. And then this, the details are too finite here, so they're going to become quite pixelated when you scale it down a little bit. So I would definitely I would go with this rather than this and this. And this just becomes a little bit too complex and the colors clash here. So yeah. This one isn't too bad, except it feels like the side of this, the beginning of these tails don't align with the flow of the cloud here. So you got the idea right to put space between them, to put negative space or white space, but they don't flow with the profile of this cloud. So that would be a big adjustment at least. All right, and no, we have a couple more. No, this is the last one. So the cloud here becomes way too bumpy, I guess you could say. Most of the other entries, you see that they use a simpler cloud type thing, and these are too, I would also say, thin for them to be effective. So I would just work on a more simple cloud. I mean, the one I like the most only has three cloud blobs, I guess you could call them, or whatever. So yeah, I would work on simplifying things. All right, so that is it. Thanks, guys, for submitting the entries. I think this is our most active DesignCourse challenge. Let me know if you guys want me to keep on doing logo design ones, or if you have other ideas. And yeah, for sure, please consider... sorry, my cam software stopped for a second. But yeah, please consider joining DesignCourse Premium, where I could really spend a lot of attention just on you and getting you guys to become badass designers. All right, so yeah, check out designcourse.com/premium and subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't yet. All right, so we're going to be doing another challenge here in the next few days, so check back often. All right, goodbye.